Wouldn't it be nice if Adam Sandler didn't count the dates up all so wrong? And wouldn't it be nice to talk together in a format that goes way too long? You know it's time to rewind, baby, for 19 dates of this movie with Drew Barry. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice? Good morning, listeners. It's another beautiful day here on It's Time to Rewind. I'm your host, Bubbawheat, and joining me today is my guest, Leandra from Rocky Horror Minutes. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastically.
That's great. And this season we're discussing, what was the movie again?
50 First Dates.
Well, actually it's 19 first dates, and we're going through them one date at a time. This week's date is what I'm calling their first dates because, well, it's their first date. And it starts at 11 minutes and 32 seconds with Henry Roth getting a table right next to Lucy and ending at 21 minutes and 21 seconds with Henry turning down an offer from Alexa. No, with Missy Pyle's character turning down an offer from Alexa. No, from Henry turning down an offer from Missy Pyle's tax attorney. Right. One of those. So, before we get started, I am curious, what is your history with 50 First Dates and Adam Sandler movies in general?
I hadn't seen 50 First Dates since the first time that I saw it, like back in, I guess, the early 2000s or whenever it first came out. I I just very much remember it fondly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Although I have a couple of very very big Adam Sandler hater friends who who had kind of convinced me that there's nothing good about an Adam Sandler film. And because of that, I'd kind of forgotten that there's something incredibly charming about this one in particular.
Yeah, I think that this is one of his better movies. I would even probably say this is probably, at least in terms of Adam Sandler comedies, it's in like one of his top five for me.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Hmm. And I think really just his chemistry with Drew Barrymore is what really helps sell this movie. And I I still have yet to see The Wedding Singer, but I think that one is really top of my list of Adam Sandler movies that I haven't seen yet that I actually do want to see at some point.
That's fair. I I don't know that I've seen it either, but I keep hearing good things about it.
Hmm. And then, jumping into today's date, we get another push in of the Hookie Lao Cafe, and Henry Roth is already so enamored of Lucy, not even having spoken to her during his visit here yesterday, that he decides to come in and try and snag a date with her. So, what do you think about this whole like meet cute between them?
It it is incredibly charming. It's I think that Adam Sandler really, at least at this point in his career, tried to do much more buffoonery, and
Hmm.
this is kind of an understated Adam Sandler, and and it really pays off. And of course, Drew Barrymore is just having a wonderful time stacking up the waffles and just very much into the scene. So I feel like they pair together so well.
Yeah, I think it's really adorable, the how the two of them interact, and I think it's interesting that this, like the way that this is set up, because since he didn't actually talk to Lucy at all during his previous visit, he only noticed her. So in this scene, we don't actually get the issue with her memory yet. That's still delayed by one more date. So this is still like a, for her, it truly is her first meeting of Henry because she didn't meet him and, she may have not even noticed him the previous day.
Yeah, I I really think that this date had to be very strong so that you get not just the humor but also the tragedy of subsequent dates.
Hmm. And I do think that I think it works well with just the little bit of oddness about how she is enamored with his fishy smell of his hands, because
Yeah,
I think that's an unusual choice to be like that that instance of attraction between them is the fact that his hands smell like fish, and that reminds her of her brother and father. Which, if you think about it, that's a little bit weird. It's like, I love the smell of your hands because it reminds me of my father and brother.
yeah, I'm really not sure that I could ever do that. Like I would never go, "Oh wow, your hands, they smell so so much like a fond memory of my dad and brother. I find you incredibly attractive." That is not something that would come to mind for me.
Yeah, and then the other thing, and I like that we just get this brief moment of Sue. Like she notices this happening, and you can tell that she disapproves, but not enough to interfere.
Yeah. I think that everybody there is like very protective of Lucy, of course, and
Hmm.
and the the kind of charmingness that Adam Sandler's character brings to the table is not necessarily what they want to see Lucy fall into.
Yeah, and I also appreciate that I think this movie does a good job of showing the immediate connection between these two characters and the fact that it is a romantic connection and not like a sexual attraction,
Exactly.
because it's, we get this transition, this time transition, and you have Sue coming saying that they're setting up for lunch, so the intention is clearly that they've talked for at least a couple hours, if not for several hours. Like, if she showed up early, like say 9 a.m., then they talked until, 11 or 12.
And I think that I've definitely been in that situation where I immediately hit it off with somebody and just want to talk their ear off for the rest of the day. I wonder if because I haven't seen the rest of the film in such a long time, I'm trying to remember if this has ever happened to Lucy before. Now that she has this issue,
The I get the impression that it hasn't, just because her father and brother and Sue and Nick are so protective of her that there's not a whole lot of time that she's spent during the day that's not with either of them, because she wakes up, goes to the Hukilau Cafe, has breakfast, then goes home and goes with her dad to pick out a pineapple, and then comes back, paints the house, watches The Sixth Sense, and goes to bed. Yeah, and then I think the other, bit of Adam Sandler weird, juvenile humor is this walrus penis joke, which ends up being a running gag. And I'm not sure what to think about it, because it's like Henry being both crude but also prudish at the same time, because he's making this joke about walrus penises, and yet he is hesitant to say penises in front of Lucy.
it's very cheeky, and I think that it's definitely the sort of thing that that if you are used to kind of chatting up somebody, you're not going to want to go straight for the vulgarity, but you do want to be somewhat scintillating. It it seems like maybe that's a thing that he said before.
Yeah, this definitely feels like a line. It's although, I say that and I think it makes sense that it feels like a line that he's used before, but he is kind of couching it because he realizes that, he doesn't want to use the same tactics with Lucy that he has with other women. But it's like he couldn't stop himself to start the story, but he did like cushion the blow, I guess, once it started coming out.
It almost seems like the sort of thing that he would tell like a grandmother or like an elderly person uh, who is showing a lot of interest in his job and just like trying to be a little bit silly.
Hmm. And of course, I was curious, and so I tried looking it up, and I think the what he says is not accurate. That walruses do not have the second largest penis uh, of all mammals. They, the number one is I think obviously the blue whale, which is the
Yeah.
largest mammal, and that's incredibly huge. It can get up to 18 feet.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and the walrus, I think I read that they tend to be around 80 centimeters, which is about 2.5 feet.
Which is
But
like still huge and terrifying. But
yeah, but not like insanely large. The they would have to at least be the third largest because elephants are the largest of land mammals, and they there's ranges between like 4 to 6 feet.
yeah, I wonder why that is in the script. I know that it's like at least funny conceptually, but the second largest um, penis of mammals just seems like a very random and obviously incorrect factoid.
Yeah, I mean it feels like a line, and I think it's presented within the movie as just being a line because it's like the setup for a joke. But then Henry, fails. He doesn't stick the landing, and it like with Lucy, he sticks the landing because uh, the Dan Aykroyd character, the doctor character, he does the correct punchline, which you were expect in this moment later on in the movie, because you expect Henry to say, "Well, mine's the largest," but he sidesteps that and gives it to Tattoo Face over there.
And I love the obvious like irritation that that they're still there from Nick. He clearly is like, well, I at least think that that him cutting the spam in half is kind of a indicative of how irritated he is that Adam Sandler's doing this, that Henry's doing this.
Mhm. I didn't get that myself. I always just assumed just because like you don't get a shot of him looking at them that I always just understood that is just how he always cuts the spam, and that was the joke.
Oh, okay. That makes sense too.
Yeah. And then they head outside, and Henry goes into like his dream that kind of pays off about wanting to study the walruses because they spend 2/3 of their life underwater, which is another incorrect fact. I did look it up, and they actually hadn't been studied too much, but there was a 2010 study where they tracked 21 walruses with satellite trackers, and they don't dive deeply a whole lot, but they did like that study showed that they do have dives deeper than they had expected. They can dive up to 500 meters, which is like in the top 10 of the deepest of I forget what type of marine mammal they're classified of, but like walruses, seals, those types of sea mammals,
Gotcha.
they're in the top 10 of deepest divers. But most of the time, they like to spend their time in shallow waters, and they really only dive to the shallow seafloor for to scrounge for food. And
Mm.
they feed on bottom dwellers like crabs, mollusks, and stuff like that. And they only spend a little bit less than half their time on underwater to feed, and the rest of the time they're just lounging, like Lucy says, it just sleeping on rocks.
I I know that you had said that you weren't planning on doing a lot of research, but yeah, I can definitely tell that that didn't last very long.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's kind of funny that this movie is set in Hawaii, and there's a lot of Hawaiian culture that they're trying to share, and a lot of like marine life culture and information, but at the same time, it feels like they didn't really do the research. They just maybe skimmed a Wikipedia article and went from there and just kind of went, this is what everybody thinks they know about it, and that's good enough for them because this is just a romantic comedy, so nobody's really going to check the facts on us.
Yeah, little did they know.
and and I also looked up Lucy's car because that's a very interesting little car. Had you ever like did you recognize it at all?
Oh, I didn't at all, but I did think that it was very weird looking.
Yeah, it's actually a Volkswagen Type 181, which was sold as the VW Thing in the US. And
Oh,
yeah, and it was manufactured from 68 to 83, but it was only sold in the US in 73 and 74, and it was discontinued in 75 due to stricter state safety standards for passenger vehicles, specifically the fact that the windshield was too close to the people in the front seats. And
oh,
that's why they stopped selling it in the US. And yeah, it's a neat little convertible. It's very boxy. I kind of feel like the boxy look kind of came back again
yeah.
for a little while.
I it seems like the sort of quirky car that a Drew Barrymore character would have. So
Mm,
it definitely checks out.
yeah, and I do love this little happy dance that the two of them do. Well, on either side of this delivery truck, which is Kaneohe Bay Delivery. I believe that's the way you pronounce it.
I believe you.
Yeah, I just do my best Hawaiian accent. Uh,
The little dance, it was yet again one of those instances where this isn't the pickup artist, Henry. This is the wow, I just really had a great connection with somebody.
yeah,
And it really is just so sweet.
yeah, and it really shows that these two are similar and that they are both enjoying each other's company, and they do have like it's a mutual connection. I think this movie goes a long way in showing that there is a mutual connection and that it's not like a one-way obsession, because that could go easily into horror movie territory
Yes.
with Lucy's condition. And this movie does everything they can to show that no, that this is not creepy. This is genuine. It's real and it's wholesome.
And I think that that is why this is such a successful film, despite some of the things that maybe aren't great about it, which I think
Mhm.
is perhaps a great way to describe the next scene.
Yeah, yeah. Well, before we get that, we do get this, this almost to camera. from the old man. I believe his the guy playing him. His name is Joe, and he's just looking slightly off camera and says something in Hawaiian, and then and then translates for the audience. So, which I feel like this is a really weird moment. I like it to a certain extent just because I love Joe. I love this character. He is so fun and so charming. And in the commentary, they mentioned that he ad-libbed a lot of his lines for this movie.
Oh, yeah, I had no idea about that. I remember seeing that piece and going, "Ow, my fourth wall broke."
Yeah, because it's like there's really, in a way, it's really pointless that just him like saying something in Hawaiian, and I couldn't find if it was actually Hawaiian because I tried doing a reverse translate,
Hmm.
and it's what I got for Hawaiian sounded nothing like what he was saying. And then I also tried to speech to text translate, but I guess I don't have enough Hawaiian in my phone, so it kept turning it into English words that it thought he was saying. So I
Ah,
couldn't, and I also tried to tried to spell it phonetically, and that got me nowhere either. So I don't think that I feel like this is just Hawaiian gibberish that he's saying.
that wouldn't shock me, but I also don't know enough about Hawaiian to really weigh in.
Yeah. And then we move to this golf scene with Henry and Ula and his kids. And I've mentioned his kids in an earlier episode, but they are adorable. They are fantastic, and they were all just local Hawaiian children.
Oh, yeah, they're really just so cute and charming. And uh, if it was just a scene of those kids doing cute kid things, that would be, I think, better.
Mhm. And this is also like a meta Adam Sandler gag because the golf swing that Ula does, and then all his kids eventually do is based off of the Happy Gilmore swing. I always
Oh,
have
yeah.
to double check myself uh, because I need to remember if it's Happy Gilmore or Happy Madison and which one is which.
Yeah. There, it does seem like there's a lot of overlap in uh, some of the Adam Sandler universe films, and this was a nice little nod.
Yeah, and also the additional that Adam Sandler calls it out as being that's the stupidest swing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And one thing that kind of surprised me, but like we get these kids all doing these golf swings at the exact same time, and they all land on the green. And it reminds me of like one of the facts that I heard from the commentary that kind of blew my mind that there's over 100 effects shot in this movie, and this I'm sure is one of them because I'm sure that all of those golf balls are CGI.
Wow. Yeah. I if it is, then I really didn't clock it. I'm surprised at how good the CGI is in this, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think you know just doing golf balls that they're so small, and it's just to make it look like that, or it's possibly that they could have done it with composites, but I think they most likely just did it with CGI because this was 2008, and just doing like a golf ball replacement uh, onto this feels like it would be a relatively easy effect shot.
I I know so little about CGI and how to apply it that all of it is magic to me. So even the
I mean
small
these
stuff.
days, like even TikTokers do this kind of CGI in their sleep. There's all sorts of videos that it claims like, wow, I got a hole in one, and then if you like look super closely at it, you might be doubtful, and it's like, did they CGI a hole in one just to get some extra likes on TikTok? And some of them, that really is what they do.
Truly, the kids these days are so much smarter.
Yeah, and like, what's your opinion of Rob Schneider's character Ula in this movie? Because I know he like Rob Schneider in general is kind of a divisive uh divisive actor, and his choice of characters, and this one he tends to be like the most caricatured whenever he shows up in an Adam Sandler movie, and he definitely fills that role in this movie.
I think I actively dislike Rob Schneider in this because it's also like racist, and um, it seems like he's doing some measure of um, maybe not blackface, but something akin to that. And
Yeah, yeah, I definitely feel that a little bit, even though like I didn't realize, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know, but he is one quarter of Filipino. His grandmother was Filipino.
okay, yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but I think that this maybe wasn't the strongest choice for Rob Schneider, and it's definitely one of the things that ages the film, because I don't think that they would have done this, like they wouldn't have had that sort of choice made if this
Mhm.
film was getting like done more along the lines of what we in 2023 think is appropriate.
Yeah, and he does, he doesn't go like full Hawaiian, like native Hawaiian language, but he does speak a lot of what's referred to as pidgin. And they even had like a mini behind the scenes featurette about pidgin, and some explanation of what some of the terms are, even though I couldn't find out if take it a mahalo is was an actual pigeon term, or if that was one that they made up for the movie.
I'm not sure. Like it sounds like the sort of thing that would make sense for it to be a real thing.
Hmm. Where mahalo is just a pigeon for a mulligan.
Yeah.
And we have this whole setup of him has this number for the tax attorney, which we eventually find out is played by Missy Pyle. But before that, we also have this fantasy sequence, which we don't realize it's a fantasy sequence at first.
Yeah.
Do you remember if you thought this was really happening, or if you immediately thought this was a fantasy sequence the first time you watched it?
I remember thinking that it was real up until it got weird.
Yeah, I think for most people, whenever she's like, I forget the wording, but it's, whenever she's like day after day after day,
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, this is a dream.
Yeah, that's when I went, oh, this isn't actually happening.
Mm. And I like that this is like a mixed fantasy, because it's, in a way, it is what he wants, but it's also kind of scaring him off to a way that he was set up as a character, because he's set up as someone who is looking for those one night stand or one weekend stands of tourists that are going to go away in just a few days. So he has this fear of commitment, and him falling for this local that he has a genuine connection with is, as a character, he's worried about tying himself down to one person. Even though, like, for me, I feel like this is kind of the weakest part of this movie. Is them really trying to push that as part of his character.
Yeah, I feel like the that entire piece of it didn't even need to be there,
Hmm.
but I guess that as they were developing it, they were like, no, no, he should be like cool, and all the chicks should like definitely be into him, and he should be kind of a crummy person. So how do we convey that? So I can appreciate where it came from, but I don't think that they needed it in the long run.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they wanted to give him a character art where he goes from sleazebag to someone who's ready for a long-term commitment over the course of the movie, but it feels like he goes through that arc in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Exactly.
And then he's like, as soon as he talks to Lucy, he's immediately a good guy.
I
Go
guess
ahead.
phrasing it like that makes me realize just how very true that is, which I know that there are plenty of people out here who are out there that don't love Adam Sandler films kind of for that reason. It doesn't really the choices that they make aren't really sold throughout the film. It just seems like kind of a handful of wouldn't it be cool if we did this?
Hmm. And I also, after that we transition into this date scene with him and Missy Pyle's tax attorney. And again, I feel like this is a weird choice to show this part of Henry because again, it's like they're trying to show this character arc, but he's already at the end of the arc, and this is
Yeah.
the beginning of it. But at the same time, it's like they're showing that he always was kind of a good guy, or like uh, he wasn't like a predator. He was just kind of a jerk
Right.
because we get this weird moment where he confesses that he's actually uh, giving her non-alcoholic drinks so that way she feels like the women feel like they're getting loosened up because it's like the placebo effect. They think they're getting
Right.
drunk, so that lowers their inhibitions without actually making them drunk and lowering their decision making. So whenever they actually do decide to sleep with him, they're doing that on a clear head and not, he's not getting drunk and tricking people to sleep with him.
Yeah, this is kind of the opposite of a roofie. So
Right.
I am happy that they clarify that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it feels like the filmmakers are bending over backwards to show that, yeah, he's Henry as a character is a womanizer, but he's not a creep.
Yes.
And then I do also, I do like the sight gag of her drinking this entire fishbowl drink in one slurp.
I I've only recently tried one of those fishbowl drinks, and I can't imagine doing that. So it was even funnier watching this and knowing what that tastes like.
Yeah, and again, I'm sure like I don't think that this was done with CGI. I would imagine that this was done practically.
Mm.
If I had to guess, I would say that there's, a tube underneath the table and they're just, suctioning it out through the bottom of the glass.
Yeah, that's definitely what I thought would be the case with that because no way no way this is actually happening.
Yeah, that's like if you ever I don't know why I keep going back to TikTok, but if you go like to the TikTok challenges of someone trying to drink an entire gallon of milk in one sitting, that's that's kind of the thought that's where my mind goes to.
Yeah, it definitely takes longer than people think it would. So I I really like the speed with which they do this because it keeps it funny without it being like, okay, we're spending a lot of time just listening to this person slurping a drink.
Hmm. And then we get this flash of Lucy, and I do like that this flash of Lucy is like is from the diner and not from his fantasy. And also
Yeah.
it's not like a super glamorous shot either. It is a very like normal. It's just like her laughing, and that's kind of what flips the switch to make him confess about everything, even though again it has this moment of self-inflation where he has to throw in that it keeps you clear enough for a full night of invigorated passionate sex with me.
I really like the follow-up to that uh, where she goes, "Can I just pretend I didn't hear that?"
Yeah, I mean, I you can kind of feel bad from her point of view that well, I mean, I guess it's not like she went out with him all weekend, but this is just like the first date, but it's like her last night here, and she became invested in this person, and it probably feels like she doesn't necessarily have time to find someone else to have a fling with on her last night in Hawaii.
So that leads into the nice little nugget of like semi-transphobia that happens next, and
Yeah.
I that this is again one of those like product of its time
Mm.
sort of jokes that I think Adam Sandler films in general um, have a lot of.
Yeah, and I am really curious to see what everybody's take on Alexa as a character because I've watched this film a few times now, and I am still not 100% sure where I land on her as a character, and I I think I've clarified in earlier episodes, but in terms of the movie, I believe that she is represented as a woman, a female character that looks kind of masculine. So I think it's correct to refer to her character as a her, and she's played by a woman as well. But I feel like that this is like kind of a trans character before really, or I think more specifically a non-binary character,
Right.
uh, because she is someone who she's a woman that looks very masculine, and her sexuality is in question because she seems up for being with a woman, and she doesn't she's a very positive character, and I think that helps because it even whenever she's like the butt of the joke, she feels okay with it, and she has a friendship and with Henry and Ula, and that doesn't necessarily make it right, but I think it does soften the blow a little bit.
It it makes it less uncomfortable to watch
Mhm.
if she's in on the joke, if she is actively participating, then that is better than the alternative.
Right. And also it rarely feels like what they're saying is mean-spirited in a way because he Henry is a character. He uh points her out and says, how about this guy? And Missy Pyle says, isn't that a woman? And Henry says, I'm not really sure. But he doesn't say it a with any sort of disgust or any negativity in his voice. He says it as he's genuinely unsure.
Yeah. I I think that for its time it wasn't one of the worst pieces of representation, but definitely ages less well.
Yeah, and I hadn't really noticed, but Alexa's shirt is kind of incredible. She's wearing like the like the typical what you would think of as the Hawaiian shirt, the kind of button down shirt with a collar
Mhm.
and a fan, a colorful print on it, and her print is a bunch of cherubs in the clouds.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't noticed that. Um, when I was in high school, I went through a Hawaiian shirt phase, um, which which is such a weird thing to say that an actual person did. Um, yeah, I made some really questionable fashion choices as a high schooler, and that was certainly one of them.
Yeah, it's at my work we just finished a summer event, and you had the opportunity, like you are allowed to wear Hawaiian shirts as part of your work uniform, but I chose never to do that.
Of course not. Why would you?
And then is there anything else that you wanted to say about this scene or about the rest of the movie at all?
I think that what really sells this film is the the connection that Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler have within it. I think that it still is a good film to watch because of that, and in spite of the other things that kind of go along with it.
Mm. Yeah, there's still a fair amount of like the gross out humor and the weird the unclarity, I guess you might call it.
Yeah. When I think about this film, I don't think about any of that. I think about like that the fact that it's actually a sad film in a lot of ways.
Hmm. And in and I think I'll probably talk more about it later in the film, but I think something that they mentioned in the commentary, which the commentary is the director Pete Singer, I believe, and Drew Barrymore, and it's a fun commentary. The two of them seem like they get along well as
Oh,
well, but they do mention that this is a movie about a romance with a disabled person where the disability is not solved at the end of the movie.
yeah.
Instead, the the non-disabled character learns to live and adjust their life to accommodate their disability rather than cure it.
And that is really good. Like
Mm,
sometimes people don't need to be fixed, or sometimes they can't be fixed, but they still deserve love.
right. And I think that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. And why don't you go ahead and take a moment to let everybody know where else you can be found online?
You can find Rocky Horror Minute at rockyhorrorminute.com or really any place that you get your podcasts.
Right. And I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me on pretty much any social media where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on any available podcatchers. We also have a Facebook group. It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to discuss this movie or any other time loop movie or any of the previous seasons that we've discussed. And one other project that I do that I haven't talked about in a while, but I just recently did some work on again, and I keep forgetting to share is I have created a Movies by Minutes wiki, which you can find at moviesbyminutes.fandom.com, and that has all the Movies by Minutes podcasts that I'm aware of, and you can search by podcast or search by movie. And I am slowly but surely adding including a index of podcasters as well, so you can look up the various podcasters behind these shows and see what shows they've hosted and what shows they've guested on. And
Very cool.
yeah, and until next time, I will see you next week again for breakfast.
Hey, Mr. Peanut Butter Cups.
Hey, Mr. Could Kill Me in One Punch. How you doing?
You're back.
Yeah, couldn't get enough of that spam.